Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an exclusive Water Polo Wednesday, what we're calling a Sunday conversation. Today's guest is 15-time national champion, 11 as a head coach, 3 as an assistant coach, 1 as a player. He was all MPSF, all American honorable mention, and 3-time gold medalist winning coach of the women's Olympic team, Adam Krikorian. This is the first time we have ever done something like this, and we're so excited to bring this to you. So once again, Adam Krikorian on a Water Polo Wednesday exclusive, a Sunday conversation with Coach Krikorian. Welcome back, everyone. We are joined by I'm at a loss for words, an incredibly special guest, Coach Adam Krikorian, the Olympic coach of the women for the last,
Legend.
I don't even know how many years, since I can't remember anybody else in my lifetime, Adam.
Too long.
Thank you so much for being here. This is an unbelievable opportunity for us.
Well, thank you for having me. Obviously, appreciate the interest and anything we can do to help promote the sport and the game. And love what you guys are doing. So happy to be on.
Yeah, appreciate that. So we've got a lot of questions for you. We're going to dive right in. I think the first question on everybody's mind is, look, you've had so much success, right? 3 gold medals, obviously this last run we'll talk about in a minute, but you're coming back for another 4 years, LA 2028. Talk to us about the process of building into this next 4 years and what that looks like. I imagine the team will be quite different.
I would imagine. I think we're still sorting through, honestly, what the makeup of the team looks like. Need to confirm with a few of our veterans who have been around for a while whether they plan to continue or not. I think a few of them are still a bit on the fence. But I think anytime you start a new quad, new quadrennial, new 4-year cycle, I mean, you start fresh and brand new, and everyone needs to earn their spot. It's going to be, I would imagine, a very competitive environment. And like you kind of alluded to, I think we're going to see a lot of new, fresh faces, which I think is exciting. We'll see where it goes. If I had to guess, I would think, we'll have a tryout period sometime this summer. And I think, we're going to have to do a lot of developing we're really probably going to have to improve quite a bit over the 4 years to put ourselves in a position where we can hopefully have some success in LA.
So I want to get into the development aspect of things, but talk to us first about your decision to come back. You came back for another 4 years. It's a toll on the family, as we all know, right? You spend a lot of time away. I think you were saying that you're gone like 7 of the 12 weeks over the course of this next summer. Like every quad is tough, I'm sure, but what goes into that thought process and for you to continue on? I mean, with so much success, nobody would ever say, you didn't want to do it. Like, you've obviously earned the most respect of any coach ever in water polo. Talk to us about that process for you.
Yeah, well, that last comment, I mean, I appreciate that. I think respect can be lost like that.
Sure.
It's like trust. I mean, trust is built in drops, but lost in buckets. So I think you're always fighting for that trust and that respect. For me, I mean, the decision process, there's certainly a few things at play. I mean, one, as you mentioned, there's the family aspect. Number one, family is most important to me. And that's maybe the hardest part about the job is being away from them. Both my kids are in high school. They are actually 100% supportive. I think they love what I do and love following it. Although, it can be stressful actually for just parents and families who are watching their kids or their loved ones kind of go through what they go through. Sure. And my wife, God bless her soul. Like she's put up with this career of coaching. And I think you ask any wife or spouse of a coach, and they'll say just how difficult it is, and being away from home and not being around to help out either with the kids or the house or whatever needs to be done. So that may have taken a little bit of convincing. but she ultimately wants me to do what I love to do. And then for me, I need to, the biggest thing for me personally is like feeling like I have something to still give to this program. The program becomes before any of us, myself included, or any athlete that comes through. None of us are bigger than the program itself. So making sure that we have something, each one of us has something to give to the program that can add some value and benefit, and have the energy to be able to do so. Like
I was going to say, when do
thing.
you, Adam, not have value to add to the program? So I guess it goes back to, do you have the energy for it?
Yeah. I mean, and I guess, good point, Clay. I mean, there's also like this, I want to feel like I'm growing and improving. I don't want to stay here. So, having that feeling of, and ultimately, I think this is what it came down to. As time, when the Olympics finish, especially after a disappointing finish, it's like, there's no freaking way I'm doing this again. Like, I'm out. Like that was exhausting. You got to pick yourself off the floor in a lot of ways, and it takes a while to kind of get there. And then, I start having these thoughts, and they're just kind of organic about, God, I wish I would have done this a little differently, or I think I could do this a little better. So these thoughts of like growth and improvement that I get really excited about, not necessarily, winning a medal, or it's just the process and the journey of like growing and improving is still very exciting to me.
Yeah, I think if you didn't love the journey and the process, winning a medal would be kind of like empty. It's like everybody wants to win a medal, but if you don't love that journey and that process and that grind to get there, you'll never win a medal, right? The medal is nothing more than, in my opinion, a byproduct of all that hard work for that quadrennial to get to the point of having that success. That's what you prepare for, and you got to enjoy that basically the 3 years and 50, 364 days before that, right? Like to get there. So that makes sense. Now talk to us then about that journey. This is a new quadrennial. There's a lot of older vets that are probably going to, as you said, drop off the team that have been staples for you for a number of years. Now, it's no secret that you guys were very, very young in comparison to some of those other teams at the Olympics this last summer in 2024. What does it look like for you in developing over these next basically 3 years? You now have 2.5, 3 years to get there. I guess 3.5 years to get there, and make sure that, hey, you are there at the end on the podium again. What does that look like? Because as you said, every quadrennial is different.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's like so many things there. As I listen to you speak, I mean, one of the craziest stats in terms of age is that this actually was, out of all the Olympic Games that our women's team has participated in, this last team in 2024, was the oldest U.S. team in history. And
on average, when you take the average of all the ages,
the average out of all the U.S. teams, but the crazy stat is, out of the top 8 teams in the Olympics, we were the youngest. So what that tells me is that, and if you look at just the average age of the women's water polo Olympians over the last 4 Olympic Games, you'll see that the average age is going up and up and up and up.
Yeah, women are playing longer.
Women are playing longer. The professional leagues are thriving a little bit more. People obviously are probably taking care of their bodies a bit more. So I certainly don't want to push off the veterans, and I think an important part of this process, just like it's really been significant on the men's side, I think it's becoming more and more significant on the women's side in terms of trying to keep people around a little bit longer.
It's the same challenge that the men had for a long time.
This is a stat that Wes has been very interested in going into this last Olympics on the men's side, specifically of talking about ages and what has been the average age of a team for these successful Olympic teams, and where does the U.S. team compare into that now versus historically? So it's the exact same thing it sounded like on the women's side.
Yeah, and I think, and not that we need to have this grizzly veteran team all the time. I think there's something to having a youth group, and even going back to 2016, That was our youngest team ever in 20. We were 23. Average age was 23, and that was maybe the most dominant performance in any Olympic Games. I mean, we were just trailing for 44 seconds out of the entire Olympic Games. So it's this weird balance. I think we just got to keep an eye on, and then for us, just in terms of the development, kind of what that looks like. It's not just about what we're doing, right? It's I would be arrogant and naive to say that like it's just about what we're doing here training, because I don't get as much time as I probably want with the athletes. I mean, I would love we were in like a full-time training basis all the time. We do that the last 15 months. And I think we see a lot of progress and development in those last 15 months. But what they're doing outside of the time with us over the summer and our many little training camps and competitions is extremely important. And that's what they're doing with their college teams and what the staff is doing there on the collegiate level, what they're doing with their club teams, what they're doing with their high school teams. We'll have some young athletes that are probably in high school right now that I think are going to compete for 2028. So there's a lot of different people and a lot of different factors, and obviously them being intrinsically motivated to and being disciplined to be able to put in the work on their own, to be able to know that their challenges and really spend some time on their own through obviously some guidance from us and their other staffs. But it truly takes a team of people. It's not just coming from the national team. And there's an element going back to the travel. It's just, there's a part of it that they're just not going to get it just here. They need to go overseas and get it. And that's with us. It's amazing how much we improve when we go over to Europe for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Unfortunately, we haven't had many players go play professionally over the last 4 or 5 years. We need more players who are out of college to go overseas and play and get that experience. That doesn't mean we're going to go into this full-time overseas program. It is important we spend some time together, but there's so much to be learned from seeing a different style of play, being coached differently, learning from the best athletes in the world that aren't Americans, and just, again, to be exposed and to be put even in uncomfortable situations that help growth.
Yeah, I got so many questions are swirling through my mind right now from how involved are you or is the USA Water Polo staff in coordinating that development with the college coaches or with the high school coaches or the youth programs? How is this a collaborative, unified effort? Because we know everyone can get pretty focused on just their product with their 4-year program or 2-year program and age group, right? And their own success without necessarily developing all athletes holistically for the long-term growth. That's definitely an issue here with our scholastic system versus the club system we see overseas, but also sending people overseas. We just had Sarah Lazat on last week talking about how important that exposure is to European play at any age, youth especially. And we see the success on the men's side, sending our athletes playing for various teams in their development. But we also know that the emotional chemistry component for the women's side is different. And I'd love to hear about navigating that specifically, knowing that men's and women's athletes can bond differently and have need a different touch or different approach as a head coach dealing with a men's team versus a women's team. You coach men's and women's at UCLA, so you have experience with that dynamic. I'd love to hear a little bit about that side of things and how you find success in managing a women's team.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the first thing you said, in terms of working with different coaches, and I understand that, for instance, if they're playing for their collegiate team, that's the focus, and those coaches are going to have their systems and their programs, but we probably need to do a little better job of communicating with them. I think we do a decent job of communicating with them, kind of what we see. It's great to get their feedback. For instance, I went to the Mater Dei Olu game couple nights ago, and just talking with Brenda about some of her young athletes, spending an hour with Segs after the game and just chatting with him about his players, me listening to him and getting his thoughts, him listening to me, getting my thoughts. I mean, the more we're communicating to get on the same page as all of those coaches, the better off we'll be. And then with regards to I guess coaching the men and the women, I mean, it's certainly a little different. I always say I'm obviously I enjoy both. I think sometimes we make a bigger deal of the differences. The reality is the similarities are they want to be coached, they want to be pushed. At least the great ones do. They're all competitive, especially at this level. The one thing I've always really appreciated about the women is that they want to know why we're doing things. I feel like when I was coaching men, you could kind of get away with not necessarily telling the why.
Sure.
You just if you have a little bit of force, that'll go a long way. But the women, it can't just be force. It's got to be well, why are we doing this? There's got to be a greater purpose. There's got to be a connection, and so it forces you. And actually, Guy Baker used to tell me this when I was coaching with him, and it's really true. It's just it forces you to be able to explain what you're doing and have reasons, and it's really forced me to be a better coach.
Yeah.
With regard to the time spent together, it can go one of two ways. Sometimes we spend maybe too much time together, and by the end we want to kill each other. So it's just finding little breaks. I think the time for me is less about certainly the chemistry is really important, and going through some tough times, ultimately prepare us as a group and kind of harden us for those moments. But there's also just the skill development aspect. And there's nothing like repetition,
right?
And doing things over and over and over again. I can't imagine I think it's difficult what Dayon does, coming together and then, in the last couple of months and trying to piece things together. I like to have my hands involved a little bit and see their development and their growth. And I think that's the best situation for the women, and clearly it looks like what's best for the men is what they've been doing.
Yeah. Quick caveat. I just wanted to point out that this my question was not men are not emotional. Women are very emotional. Men are very, very. Wes and I particularly are very emotional people.
Yeah.
So just want to get that out there before we get called out.
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking thinking that at all.
It's interesting psychologically. I've done a lot of research on the psych side of things and organizational behavior. I used to be a professor of organizational behavior, and the why component is starting to become more and more prevalent of hey, we need to understand why we're doing this. So it's interesting that you call that out, because it turns out that when people understand why, they can put a little more effort into it to achieve a certain goal, right? And that's really an amazing insight that I think we all wish our coaches at a youth level had, of instead of swim, right? It's interesting. Now, so talk to us then. Okay, so as you develop and you go through it and you talk about repetition, and I hear repetition, and I think Radko Rudic and the number of times I had to pick the ball up underneath, and to pick it up to underneath to shoot. I mean, that was 2 hours of practice with Rudic. Yeah. Even at 16 years old, it was this is what we're going to do for the next 2 hours. Wow. And it makes a big difference. You do have a very limited time. And so what do you look for necessarily as you go into this quadrennial for these athletes who are being evaluated to make this next team and represent the United States, which to me is the biggest honor that there is in our sport, and play in the 2028 Olympics at our home pool? What are you looking for? What are some of the key things that you're these are kind of table stakes? You've got to be able to do these really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it depends probably on the position, right?
Sure.
We're trying to pick the best team, not necessarily always the best athletes, right? So it's got to piece together. I mean, for us, it's really easy to sit here and say speed, length, strength, all of those things. I think, I'm obviously, I've always been a huge proponent of speed, and the ability to be mobile in the water. I mean, if you're not mobile, you better find something that you're really good at, or you better be strong as you know what.
Yeah.
and be able to play the center and defender position really, really well. So being able to cover space quickly, I think, the stuff that's maybe a little bit more difficult to evaluate that I actually really enjoy evaluating is just someone's like intelligence, their spatial awareness,
Sure.
their ability to be able to communicate in the water with their teammates. Going back to like watching someone, it's amazing. And this is like a very simple thing, but we've all talked about it as like youth coaches. We've heard our youth coaches talk about it. Like your head is on a swivel, right? Like
in every sport, basketball,
yeah,
right? Basketball, soccer, every team sport, you're like, your head is on a swivel.
And it's amazing when you go and you watch some of these athletes, anytime I'm seeing an athlete and they're staring like this for longer than 3 seconds, and they haven't moved their head once, that's not a good sign. Like,
sure,
we have to
one's too many. 1 second's too many.
1 second's too many. 1 second's too many. So seeing that, and then seeing, this is what we do is really hard. And the competition at the highest level is insane. And the training that we put our athletes through is the most grueling. And you're failing all the time. This is like the nature of the sport. Like you're failing all the time. Every day you lose. So it's not your ability to be able to handle success, obviously, but understanding who's resilient, who's competitive, like who's going to push themselves when things get difficult to another level. And that's ultimately, that inspires the group. That's going to happen multiple times. So kind of finding that out through people, through what we watch, but then also putting them through the difficulties of our training to kind of see how they respond as well.
Yeah, that grit of who responds when things don't go well. And my wife and I always talk about this because we're married a long time, and people would ask us like, what's the key to being married that long? And I was like, look, it's easy to get along when you're on vacation. It's how do you handle it when things are not perfect at home, when the house is a mess and our daughter's crying and like it's been a tough week type of thing. Those are the things that really like galvanize teams, and the people that rise to the top aren't always the most talented, and so we see that with different teams that the most talented players don't always have that grit, and so that's a really interesting comment of, hey, it's not necessarily all the skill, it's who they are as people. I think that's fascinating. All right, so Adam, I'm very curious here. Talk to us about, you've won 3 gold medals, right? Which gold medal was the toughest to win?
They're tough. I mean, they're all tough for their own reasons. Like the first one was so tough, and that you're coming into an environment in which there was so much heartache with a team that had been so close for so long, and that wasn't able to get over the hump. And you're coming, and I'm coming in brand new with new ideas, and that didn't necessarily go off all that well in the first couple years. It takes some time. People don't like change very much, and I'm trying to instill kind of this way of playing that I see for the game. The second one was a challenge in that we really started, and I could actually see this coming quad comparing to that quad in a lot of ways, in that we were really young in 2013. A lot of people retired. We had people like Maddie Musselman, Mackenzie Fisher, Aria Fisher, who started with us when they were 15 years old. We were scrimmaging and practicing against boys club teams when they were in high school to try to help them develop, and there was just a lot of development that needed to happen. So that was exhausting, but very rewarding, obviously. And then 2021 was challenging for all the odd ways, and that COVID, obviously, and going through that and having a veteran team that was so dominant and keeping them hungry, and not straying away from complacency. I think that was such a challenge. So I mean, they're all difficult. The reality is, to make it to the top of the podium, I know I think we made it look easy, but
You did in 2021, in fairness.
You
Yeah.
did.
You know, Adam, I admire you so much. Not one of those words was about you. And I know you went through some personal stuff, and I think it was 2016, and that was hard for you. And I remember that picture of all your entire team putting their medals around your neck and what you went through. And I mean, what an unbelievable response to something you could have very easily said, this was hard for me. And so you've always made it all about the team as you started this segment. It's, you know, the program and the team is bigger than any one person or even a coach. And that right there, I want to call out, Adam, you've overcome some incredible things yourself, not just the team. Right. And so an incredibly inspirational story there.
Yeah.
We transition back now to kind of 2028. You're going into this. Obviously, you didn't qualify. Not a great performance at the World Cup. Not a great performance in the last Olympics. You're going to have to rebound in some sense. Is there a sense of urgency at all from your side, or is it, hey, we're starting fresh, it's starting clean? You know, are you going to start putting your team together earlier now to like get them more chemistry, get them more reps together?
Yeah, I'm smiling because there's always a sense of urgency. Like I never feel comfortable. I almost like as I tell the team, I'm like a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. So
Sure.
I think
I like that.
I think you described me pretty well right there as well. I nothing is good enough right now, but in it's 4 months, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we're trending
yeah.
long term. Okay. Yeah.
So there's a huge sense of urgency. I think we have a lot of work to do. The group that we took in, there's a lot to be said about the group that we took in World Cup. I'm actually really proud of that team. They were maybe a little bit in over their head. We're taking people to play internationally against senior teams that are 15, 16 years old. It was a bit of a stretch, but they actually really grew a lot.
Sure.
I think a lot of them have potential, whether it's potential that can be realized by 2028 or not, who knows? We'll see what that journey looks like. But wasn't actually happy with World Aquatics actually, and just the calendar of where that World Cup fits in with us. It's like we're so disorganized from a water polo standpoint. Sometimes it drives me nuts, but it's the calendar
like globally and domestically.
I mean, they're trying to make this World Cup a big deal, which is great. But to have the World Cup prelims in January and then to have the finals in April, right in the middle of our postseason, it's a lack.
It's conference. It's like conference play, right? Conference championship week.
It's a lack of respect for the American program, and that drives me nuts. We've been the best in the world. Whether we're going to continue to be the best in the world, who knows? But like, it's not just about no disrespect to the Europeans. It's not just about Len water polo and their schedule. There's a lot that needs to be considered, and for a major championship to be held right in the middle of our collegiate season, postseason schedule, it's just it's disrespectful. So not happy about that, obviously, but we'll make the best of it moving forward. And I'm just really looking forward to getting everyone together and making and kind of going through a really competitive environment starting the middle of May, right after the NC2A season.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it would be possible to start a professional women's league here in the States, given the talent we have coming out of college? I mean, a lot of great athletes from around the world that compete at our universities here in the United States. And then there really isn't much here after, right? We're starting to see a little bit, but not at the level of these European teams. And then not year round. It's only, 3 months or so. Do you think there's appetite for that here in the US? And would that then, if so, would that help you as a coach and these players continue to play longer?
It would be great. I mean, that's the dream. I am a bit skeptical of the ability to do that. The nice thing when I look at the women's leagues in Europe, they're certainly like our like post grads, ages 23 and above, but they have a good chunk of young kids that are part of that, right? The 18 to 22, 18 to 23 year olds. And for us to start a professional league that doesn't include that age group because they're playing in college would be really challenging. I think the first step for us, and I have some creative ideas, whether we can find the funding to be able to do it or not, That's another question. But I think the first step is actually creating some competition between those professional teams in Europe and our collegiate teams.
Interesting.
And I think it's possible. Again, it would require some resources to be able to start something, but we need to start small and then hopefully try to build some excitement and some energy from there. I think there's a probably greater chance on the men's side, to be quite frank, just because guys want to play longer seemingly, and can play longer. So, I mean, you two still play, right? I mean, how old are you guys? And
Well, I officially hung it up after the gold behind me. So that was at 38. I'm 40 now, and I've had 4 knee surgeries in 3 years. So I'm done. But I appreciate you thinking I can still play.
I mean,
That means a lot to me,
you look
Adam.
like you can play.
Well, that's my guy, right? Like anytime you want me to get in the water, there's not much I can contribute, but I'm there for you, man.
Yeah,
I know
I had to
Clayton
hop
still
in with
plays.
our LA guys at a training a couple days ago, and hey, I was in there for 2 minutes and I could hang, and I had to get out. But like, hey, you know,
He's as
37,
good
we're
once as he's
kicking.
ever been, Adam. He's as good once as he's ever been. I love it. That's an interesting point, though, to get our collegiate teams playing abroad. The funding I think is obviously interesting. We have the men's national league. Forever, I have been saying we need a women's national league, and I'd love to see it be year round and include high school kids. Where, look, as you know, like when we were growing up, there was Premier League, and I played in Hungary as a 16-year-old against 30-year-old men, and it changed the way that I played the game holistically. Like my whole game transformed between 16 to 18 because of the competition levels that I had. And that's what put me on the map, because that was something that differentiated it. Knowing that, though, do you think it's a good idea for some of these women to start to go abroad throughout their high school career, maybe take a gap year or something like that to help improve their game, given the level of the higher level and opportunity, because these high school girls cannot compete with these college women because of that NCAA rules and whatever else. Do you think that would be something that you'd recommend for some of these younger athletes?
I think it all depends on the kid, and I certainly am not going to endorse people just leaving their high school teams to go play, professionally and on
Sure.
club teams. And I think it depends on the kid and the maturity of the kid. You don't want to send them into just a young student, who might be 16, 17 years old, that is not prepared to be able to live on their own. Like, their mental well-being is first and foremost. So making sure it's a fit. But if it is, it's not a bad idea if they have the resources and if they have the maturity to be able to kind of be in that position. And then just one comment, like on the National League stuff, because I thought about this for forever.
I'm sure
on the women's side is like, and one of the reasons why we don't do it is we have such a shorter period. It have to happen in the fall, and we have such a shorter period of time based on, I mean, everyone pretty much finishes around Thanksgiving with their training, and the start time for these colleges are different as well. So the semester schools, they're starting school at the end of August.
Middle to end of August.
They could start kind of a national league in September, but the quarter schools, so the quarter schools don't start school until the very end of September. So they're not even back on campus until the very end of September, which they don't really start training until October. So now we're looking at like a really short, like 6-week period of time. Now we could try to get these teams back together and kind of have a national league that starts before people are back in school. But I think we might run into some challenges. And the other aspect of it, and this is a selfish and maybe controlling on my end, is I at times I see more benefit in just getting the very, very best players and bringing them in for a weekend training camp. And so I can, and us as a staff can start implementing our strategies and our system of play instead of just these scrimmages where people are doing different things all the time. So that's what we do. We'll have a training camp in September, probably a couple training camps in October. We'll have a training camp in November. and then we'll have a competition in December, usually the Holiday Cup. So that's where we just take the best kids who we identify, and we get to spend a little bit more like individual time with them. And that's worked for us, but I'm certainly always open to ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think we get new ideas as we get exposure to different things too, right? So on the men's side, this is the first season where we have collegiate clubs competing with the men's teams and having, you know, some youth kids included in that as well. Definitely see the value of having a shorter but higher quality, more intense development over a week or weekend versus more prolonged season where it's still like a mix of play, a mix of systems. But perhaps there's some value there still for what collegiate players are willing to be around, even if it's, you know, their school period hasn't started yet. And it's like you said, the onus is on the player for how hungry they are to be available and be around and to play with one of the, if not their college club teams, with one of the women's club teams, be it LA Peacocks, Riptide, O Club, Nyack. And that still would potentially give opportunities for those youth high school athletes where no matter what system they're playing in, playing against women certainly accelerates that development and their confidence that they could do that. So, I mean, let's have more conversations about it, because if there's, like we said, any appetite out there, we'd love to help get that off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are big proponents of development. I think we started the first ever profitable men's league in our SOPAC Super League. It's something we've wanted to do for the women's side of it, and we'd love to learn from you on how best to go about that. I think that that's something that's very, very important for this sport in general, right? We're not interested in just men or just women. We want the sport in general to continue to grow here in the United States. So, Adam, thank you so much for this. This has been a phenomenal opportunity for us, one that I will cherish forever. I know I told my wife about this, and she was like, oh, that's going to be a lot of fun. She was very jealous. So thank you for taking the time, man. Is there anything you'd like to share? We kind of love to open it up and let you espouse whatever you want to espouse here at the end. And you know, the studio's yours, as we like to say.
No, I mean, I just, I feel like I'm out in the community a decent amount, and always try to say, express my gratitude to people who I come across, but just, you know, other than you two for hosting this show. And I just appreciate the support over the years. You know, I think, and specifically for our team in this last games, you know, we came up a little short of our goal, obviously in a heartbreaking fashion in a lot of ways, but it's been, you know, I think you come back off of something like that and you don't know the type of reception you're going to get. I think when you invest and you care so much, as we all did, I think you're a little nervous sometimes. I don't want to speak for the athletes, but I'm guessing like a little nervous to kind of show your face in some ways, because you feel like you let down a lot of people. But the really neat thing is just the reception and the warmth that the entire team has gotten since we returned. And you know, we wish we would have done a little bit better, but that's part of life and that's part of sport, and we need to move on. And again, just appreciate everyone's support and love and through the process, and support us, continue to support us for the next 4 years. It's going to be fun to watch this team grow and develop, hopefully as I project that they will.
Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited about kind of this next quadrennial, Olympics being in LA. We'd love to host you at the LA Athletic Club soon. And really appreciate you taking the time today. And yeah, thank you very much. We will love to have you on maybe once a year to see how things are going.
Sounds great. I'm in.
All right,
Thanks,
Adam.
guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Adam.
All right.